you don't know who Jason Aldean is, he's a country singer. And this is news that I can get behind because if you didn't know, I'm a big country fan. I love country. I've kind of been into it for a few years now. And Jason Aldean is an awesome country artist. He's kind of an outspoken conservative. A lot of country singers are, but he's a little bit more in the political limelight than other country singers are. So he's really awesome. He has a lot of music you've probably heard of. I don't know if you've heard of the song "You Make It Easy." That's kind of his most famous song. I'm not going to sing it because YouTube might, ban me or I might get a copyright infringement on that. So I'm just going to let you go listen to it if you want. But he's got really good music. If you didn't hear, he released a new song in May. But the reason why it's being talked about right now is because the music video was just released, I believe, last Friday, called "Try That in a Small Town." And we're going to talk about it a little bit. When he released this music video, the left freaked out. And the reason why is because the music video basically features him standing in front of a government building with protesters and rioters behind him. And the theme for the song is basically I dare you to try that in a small town. And people started calling him a racist. They started criticizing him, which, as we'll talk about in a second, really doesn't make any sense, especially when considering he doesn't really mention race ever. He doesn't mention anything that has to do with black people or Hispanics or anything like that. Hey, I want to talk really quick about the title sponsor of this show, which is, of course, Gulag America. Now, why have you not gotten a shirt or a sweatshirt from Gulag America? I know it's hot right now. You can get a short sleeve shirt, but sweater weather is going to be coming real quick. At least this last winter was very long. So if you're wanting to be warm again this winter, check out Gulag America. Their sweatshirts are incredible. After they wash, their sweatshirts are just as good as they were before. If you use my code JoshCar10, you will get 10% off at Gulag America. Again, that is JoshCar10 for 10% off at Gulag America. Patriotic clothing for the best patriots. Side note about Jason Aldean, just so you guys know, if you remember back to the Vegas shooting, it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was super horrific. Jason Aldean was on stage when that happened. So he's been involved in politics, kind of whether he likes it or not, for a long time. And so he's had a lot to say about gun control specifically. So people, like I said, they were calling out Jason Aldean as a racist. I wanted to look up the lyrics. I'm just gonna read for you the first verse of the song as well as the chorus, and I'll let you guys decide if Jason Aldean was being a racist. That's what he said. He says, "Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. Yeah, think it's cool? Well, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough? Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Around here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't. Try that in a small town." Basically, the theme of the message is, hey, if you're going to do things that are unpatriotic or you're going to do things that put people in harm's way, I dare you to try that in a small town because the sense of community is so strong. How is that racist? Like, there are black people that live in small towns, there are Hispanics that live in small towns, there are white people who live in small towns. I don't understand how that has anything to do with race. Ben Shapiro pointed this out. He literally said the people who are calling Jason Aldean out for racism, they're the real racists, because basically what they're saying is black people can't live in small towns, or they're assuming the fact that riots and protests can only happen when it's certain races doing it, which, by the way, I'll be the first to say, if you just look at the statistics, people who protest are generally white. They're generally like white women who don't have jobs, as well, and white, like, young college student males. Those are the people protesting and rioting. So it's not a race thing at all. And if people think it is, then really they're the racists. They're saying only black people or people of color are capable of looting or holding people at gunpoint, which is not anything that Jason Aldean is saying. For his part, he spoke out against it. According to CBS, he said, "These references are not only meritless, but dangerous. While I can try and respect others to have their own interpretation of a song with music, this one goes too far. No one, including me, wants to continue to see senseless headlines or families ripped apart. Try that in a small town, for me, refers to the feeling of a community that I had growing up, where we took care of our neighbors regardless of differences of background or belief." I'm speechless. Like, I don't understand the misinterpretation there. He's literally saying there's a sense of community. We should protect each other. We live in a small town. Doesn't matter your background, your belief. He says it right here. It doesn't talk about any specific background or belief in his song. He just says, if you're going to act a fool and come into our small town and hold, the owner of a liquor store at gunpoint or carjack an old lady, then we're going to protect our own. That sounds like a pretty good message to me, especially when crime rates are at an all-time high, mostly in large cities. So, I mean, essentially, his message is, hey, you might be able to get away with that in these liberal big cities, but come to a small town and you see what happens. And the message of the song honestly pans out because you can't really get away with that stuff in small towns. You just don't see crime rates of that size in small towns. The reality, and this is what I believe about this, the reason why the left is attacking Jason Aldean on this front. The left are afraid of small towns. The left, the whole sense of community, or the fact that you can find a commonality on where you live, is really scary to the left because, as you've noticed, intersectionality is at the forefront of leftist ideology, at least today. Basically, what they use in order to gain support is they want you to focus on your identity based on your race, your gender, your sexual identity, rather than where you live, your sense of community. If you're focusing on those things that really don't matter, or in other words, things that you're born with that you can't actually control, it's really easy to control people. Especially, you can lie to them and tell them that there's institutional racism or institutional like toxic masculinity, things like this. But on the other side, if you're telling people you have a sense of community and that is who you are, you're part of that community and you can protect each other, that's a message that the left really can't use to their advantage. And so I think they're really afraid of small towns. Obviously, there's a lot of people on the surface who just want to be loud and call it racism. But I actually think there's an underlying fear from liberal elitists that are very afraid of messages like this because it cuts exactly against what they are purporting in their CRT, their critical race theory, their gender ideology, the other LGBTQ ideology that they're pushing. It matters much more, in my opinion, who you live with, your community, your country, than the things that you really can't control. And I think that scares the left.